Hey friends, in this episode I'm going to give you some tips to reduce your stage clutter so you have a cleaner looking stage and also reduce your setup and teardown times. As a working sound guy, I see a lot of bands come through my doors and get ready for the evening, and I can tell pretty quickly who's a seasoned professional and who's not so experienced. The seasoned guy will come in with a minimal amount of equipment, usually, and he's really well organized. If he's a guitar player, his pedal board is all pre-configured and pre-wired, and it's got nice cable harnesses all set up. So he just plugs this unit into that unit, into the power, and he's ready to go in just minutes. Whereas the not so seasoned guys will come in with usually a lot of equipment, and they have to string all this stuff together and make sure it's all working, and it takes them a lot more time. Well, just like a seasoned musician, as a sound guy, over time I've developed some of my methods to simplify my band setup and teardown process and reduce the time that those things take, because, that's not the most fun part of the evening. And I do that through the use of snakes. And I love snakes. They are really handy because for every instrument on stage, you have a microphone, maybe multiple microphones in the case of a drum kit. And each one of those microphones requires a cable run going back to your mixing board. And so it's not uncommon to have a lot of wire on the stage that goes from every single microphone or direct box back to your mixer, back to your junction box, your snake box. And in addition to that, we need cables that go out to each one of our stage monitor wedges. And we need to provide power to the band, so there's extension cords that go out. And so there's a lot of wire on stage. And that's a lot of stuff to lay out and get connected before the show. And then after the show, of course, we have to pick it all up and wind it all up, and it's a little bit tedious. And I've often joked when I'm setting up or tearing down bands of, nobody told me there's so much, gosh darn, wire involved in this business. My gosh. Well, I save an awful lot of time through the use of snakes. For example, I realized that just one, that I'm going to need 4 vocal mics on stage. And or thereabouts usually. And so I have put together a bundle of cables like this with 4 connectors, and they're just mic cables, just a bunch of mic cables that I've got tied together, in this case with a little electrical tape and a nylon tie strap. And so this is just a set of microphone cables, standard mic cables, bundled together into a group, and this group are all of my vocal mics. Now, as you can see, this end goes into my mixer, and not too far away I've got them tied together to keep the bundle together. And then beyond that, I've got another bit of electrical tape here which ties it together. And then beyond that, I pretty much leave them loose because I know that the mics need to be separated out on stage, and I'm not sure exactly where they're going to end up from one show to another, so I keep it flexible that way. But by doing this, I keep these 4 cables bundled together always as a set. So when I need to set up my mics, I just plug the end right here into my mixer or into the stage box on stage, and I just roll this snake out right across the front of the stage, and voila, I've got my 4 vocal mics done in one swoop. Likewise, at the end of the night, I've just got 1 cable bundle to grab and wind up, and all the mics are done, rather than chasing out individual cables. Now, of course, sometimes on the microphone end of it, sometimes the snake is long enough that it'll go directly to the mic, but if there's somebody who's pretty wayward out there, I'll just add another line to it and extend it and pick up that mic. But even so, having this bundled snake really reduces the amount of time it takes for me to wire up all of my microphones that are going right across the front of the stage. And the fact that it's all together keeps all those cables together in a practical sense, and so it looks better on stage than having individual wires running around. Now I've got another snake that's really quite identical to this one, which is backwards, i.e. the male and female connectors are kind of on the opposite ends. And that one's used for the powered monitors that go across the front of the stage. And so again, with just one cable bundle, I can throw that down, run it right across the front of the stage, and 1, 2, 3, 4, all the powered monitors are done in one swoop. And again, it saves a lot of time. Now, these snakes are not commercial snakes, they're just simply mic cables. So I'll buy some 30-foot mic cables or so, and I'll just tie them together with electrical tape and label the connectors 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, however many are in that bundle on each end. Make sure you get 1 to 1, otherwise it's confusing. And it's real simple, real inexpensive. And one of the kind of cool things about this is if there is a failure with one of those cables in your bundled homemade snake, it's not a big deal. You can easily just separate all these wires, take the bad one out, put it into the suspect cable box, grab a fresh 30-foot cable or so, bundle it up with the other cables, and you can fix it easily. Whereas a commercial snake where all of your connectors are within one big jacketed pipe of wire, if you get a bad connection, it's kind of an adventure to fix it, especially if it's broken in the middle somewhere. Whereas with these, you can easily replace any one segment of it. And of course, with these, you can fan them out so that they can reach all the different people on stage real easily. So I know that's not too revolutionary, but it really works for me. It saves a lot of time. Obviously, I'm going to have another snake that's pretty similar in nature to this for the drums. It'll probably have a few more channels, but it's the same thing. Just a bunch of wires tied together, off to the drum kit. And in that one, I label these guys as kick, snare, and then tom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so forth. Couple of minor notes. I tend to use just standard black electrician's tape to tape these guys together because that's convenient, inexpensive, it works well. I put a nylon tie strap at the mixer end to hold it together, which acts as a reference for me, and the tie straps are really rugged so they stay in place for a long time. But I don't like to use the tie straps in other places along the wire because when you're winding this thing up, they're kind of rough on your hands, you know, they're kind of they can kind of beat up your hands as you try to wind up the snake. So great tip for you, just standard old mic cables bundled together, works awesome. As for what mic cables you should use, well, that's up to you. You can spend a lot of money on really high quality mic cables, and I would certainly never discourage anybody from using quality products. However, I tend to seek value because a cheap mic cable sounds just as good as an expensive mic cable. The difference is primarily in the quality of the connectors that are provided. And cheap cables can sometimes have poor quality connectors, and that's a hassle. Poor quality connectors don't click together nicely, and so you could have cables that disconnect from each other or are difficult to put together because mechanical alignment isn't really good. And worse yet, poor quality connectors could have intermittent electrical connections, and nobody needs that kind of thing happening during a show. So I would advise avoiding the really inexpensive cables because they probably have some pretty poor quality connectors on them. Or if you're going to pursue the inexpensive cables, just buy 1 or 2 of them and make sure that you're okay with the quality of the connectors and the quality of the cable before buying a whole bunch. On the other hand, you can spend an awful lot of money on cables, and they're very nice to deal with. You know, it's always nice working with great stuff. But like I say, you might be spending more money than really necessary because an inexpensive cable with usable connectors is going to sound just as good as a really expensive cable and will cost a lot less. So I'm not here to endorse any products necessarily, but I've been using the Whirlwind brand cables, and you can find them pretty cheap on places like eBay. And so far they've served me pretty well. They're inexpensive. The connectors that are on them are not, you know, authentic Switchcraft or Canon connectors. They're some kind of Asian low-cost connector. But overall, they work pretty well for me. They're a lot better than some of the really inexpensive cables. And I haven't had trouble with them. And they're so inexpensive, the Whirlwind cables, that if I do have a problem with a cable or it gets damaged during a show, it's not a lot of heartache just to peel that cable off and throw it into the suspect cable box and grab a fresh one and continue on. Now, in addition to the signal cables that I put together in snakes for the vocal mics, my monitors, my backline, the drums, I have a power snake. And this is perhaps one of the greatest cables I've used. I love this cable. Real simple. So all you do is you get yourself an extension cord, a nice heavy duty extension cord of the length that's long enough to go across your stage, and on the end of it I chopped off the cheap connector and put in a nice metal quad box outlet, and then I move about 6 feet or so down the cable and I chop the cable and I put another one in like so. And you can see the cable goes in one end and comes out the other, and they just are connected to this outlet right here. And then I go another 5 or 6 feet, about 6 feet, and I have, you guessed it, another outlet box. So this is a nice long heavy-duty extension cable that every 6 feet I've chopped and put in a heavy-duty wall outlet box in a metal case right there. And this is really slick because I can just unspool this guy and lay him down right across the front of the stage and plug in one end of it, and now suddenly every musician on the front of the stage has power. And also where all the powered stage monitors are, if that's what you're using, you got power for those guys too. And so this is a whole lot better solution than running an extension cord to each one of your musicians up on stage. And likewise, you can have one of these across the back of the stage as well to pick up all your backline instruments, your guitar amplifiers and synthesizers and fans and so forth. Now, of course, some stages are set up nicely and they have power outlets built into the stage, and it's real convenient for the musicians, and that's great. But lots of times that's not what you're working with, and you need to run power cords all over the place to pick up power for your equipment on there and the musicians and their equipment. And this long extension cord saves so much time. I can, like I said, I can just run one of these right across the front edge of the stage, and that gives power for everything up there, one across the back side of the stage, and I'm done. And then of course at the end of the night it's just a matter of picking up these 2 cables and spinning them up, and I'm out of there. You know, that's a whole lot better than chasing down a half a dozen or more individual extension cords going here, there, and everywhere. So that's my tip for you, friends. Just grab some cables and bundle them together and make your own snakes to pick up the main number of instruments. Make yourself a couple power snakes, and it will clean up a lot of the wiring on stage and keep it more neat looking, and it will dramatically reduce the amount of time it takes for you to set up your band or to tear it down afterwards. Because I can't speak for you, but for me, that's not the most exciting part of working with bands. I'd much rather spend the majority of my time working the show and a little bit less time setting it up and tearing it down. Well, hope that was useful for you, and if it was, or even if it wasn't, but if you thought the content was interesting, of course I'd appreciate if you give me a thumbs up, give me a like. If you want to subscribe, that would be cool. And if you want notifications of new videos that come down, make sure to tag that there bell icon down below so that YouTube will send you an email saying when fresh stuff is available. Well, once again, folks, I appreciate you coming by and checking out an episode of Sound Advice. My name is Barry. I'm a sound engineer in the Minneapolis, St. Paul, Twin Cities area, and I'd love to hear your comments. If you need help and you're in the area, I'd love to help you out. So have a great night, have great shows, and I'll catch you again soon.